Now, I consider myself a bit of an amateur philosopher, right? Like I watch like a bit of Alex O'Connor every now and then, alongside like the occasional debate, like morals and ethics and whatever. So I don't know, insert some random clip here or some intelligent conversation or whatever.
It's a meta category. What's the category of predator? Bear, eagle, if you're a primate. Fire? Is fire a predator?
No.
Well, it's complicated because a fire kills you.
Yeah, God knows. Now, a question that I thought of anyway, some time ago, and I think I just remembered it quite recently, was if you had, like, what if you had yourself as your own child? Now, I don't know, I think that's quite an interesting question, because mainly because like the many ways it can go immediately. So I don't know, I'd state immediately, like, the child isn't gonna have like any memories of you, like it would be its own, I don't know, then person in a sense. But then at the same time, it's like, well, genetically, it's all the same, and then like it can have the potential to like grow into the person you are now. Um, Now, if I gave a question here, which is like, is the child a clone then? My short answer would probably be no. Now, my long answer to that question would probably start off with like, well, what is a clone? I mean, is it just someone who's like genetically identical, say, but then you've got like twins and whatever? Or is it someone who's like got all the memories of yourself alongside the genetic makeup? Or I don't know, just some way of putting it. Uh, Now, to me, a clone is kind of someone who's like got the same genetic makeup, but also possesses like the memories as well. But I mean, if you look at like movies and stuff, it doesn't necessarily need to be the memories. Because I mean, there's plenty of movies where, like, say Avatar, for example, where their Colonel, I think in the second movie when he wakes up and everything, like he's a clone, but he doesn't necessarily remember anything until he's there watching the videos and stuff, of like his past self. But in a sense, I don't know. I think it has to do with some of your memories in a way, because otherwise I consider that closest to being like a new person. How different is like the child anyway to the clone? Now to kind of stay on track with it, the one way I'm going to think about this is using the trolley problem. So now say a scientist came to you and said, "Well, I've made a clone of yourself. It's got all your memories. It's got everything." And that'll be the clone on one side of the track. And then on the other side would be, say, the child. I don't know, a toddler or newborn, anything, whatever. But it's genetically literally you. Um, Even I guess in a sense you can think about it like as if you just time traveled, literally took you when you were born and brought you into the situation. But like older you's still here somehow. I don't know. Don't think about it too much. But yeah, obviously it'd be without all your memories of your older self and everything. Um, Now, I mean, after a little bit of a thought, I think that most people would end up choosing to save the child. Um, like without your memories compared to like your genetically identical clone with all your memories, which I think is a bit strange in a way still. Because I mean, if you put yourself onto the tracks as a third option, say, I imagine like assuming like severely depressed, you'd have you, the child, and then the clone. I imagine most likely the clone is still probably going to be the one that you'd probably end up killing over the child and over yourself. Despite the fact that, like, if you think about it, the clone's technically the one that's closest to you. Like the clone has all your memories and everything, whereas the child, I guess the reason that you wouldn't choose the child is the fact that like the child's kind of like a new person. That's if that makes sense. Um, I don't know, but then I guess also in the sense like I guess you could say the clone's more expendable compared to yourself because I guess like you as yourself, you're the original, um, and the clone is just the memories and everything. So I guess you can say that like, there's two copies to fill one place, which doesn't really make any sense. But then I guess in some sense as well, it doesn't really make a difference if we kill you or the clone because I mean either could then take the purse back of whoever the person is if you've got the same memories and everything. Now, I would say the child, I think like once grown up, like regardless of how you try and raise them and everything, is still probably going to end up as a different person. Even if you try and raise the child in the exact like as close to the conditions that you grew up in, still going to be a completely different person. It's not going to have the same people like friends or whatever growing up, and then same with like teachers and I don't know. I imagine maybe teachers if you have them grow up 20 years after yourself, but I'd say regardless, the child's going to end up at least a little bit different to how you would be. So I guess it's kind of the nature versus nurture kind of debate as well. Um, so kind of looking at that anyway, I think it kind of shows in a way that the child is closer anyway to being like a unique child rather than just a clone in a sense, which I don't know, somehow here anyway, that's perceived as a bit more like value of life, if that makes sense, rather than the clone, despite the clone being, like a perfectly, I don't know, healthy, like then independent person in a sense. Not necessarily unique, but still independent. Now, generally speaking, I would too probably also save the child if I haven't already said over the clone. Which I mean, the way I've like said all this, there's probably some bias in a sense. Of like I've said, like, oh, I think most people would react the same way, but I don't know. I would say I truly would believe that most people would probably save the potential person rather than like a copy of someone that's already existing. In a sense, like this is all outside of the fact that like it's not just like, oh my god, we've made a clone and like, oh, it's really cool and whatever. Like if it was just like say it could be a regular thing somehow with science and like you weren't phased by that part, then this is kind of how the question is. Um, Now, I mean, another question I'm thinking of is like you want children, but the only child you can have is going to be the clone. Would you? And like you can never, by the way, you can never tell the child that like they're going to be the clone or anything. They'll never know. Growing up kind of thing is how I'm kind of thinking about this as well. Like it's not like you get to like 5 and then you go like, oh yeah, by the way, you're a clone. You know what I mean? But I don't know. I'd say immediately. You know yourself best in a sense, obviously, and like obviously you remember like how you grew up and everything. And if you truly wanted like the best actually for your child, and you chose that like again the question here is, you can only have yourself as a child. You can't have another child at all. If you wanted, then I would say people probably would, is my guess. If you wanted children, but it had to be yourself, I would say they probably would. Now think about I don't know. Think about some time when you were growing up, where your parents probably like I don't know didn't help or didn't react or whatever in some way that could have like this is the thing I would think that in this situation more often than not that would be kind of prevented. Again, this is assuming that you as the parent then in this sense actually did want children. Um, then I would say probably I don't know as a whole the child in a sense should surpass how you are, if that makes sense. Um, Now, anyway, like even into this question, I would still kind of I'd sort of include the fact that some people could be terrible parents anyway, even if they truly want to be good to the children, which I think then kind of makes it a bit more of a complex question in a sense, but I don't know. I mean, this video is like 10 minutes long, so I'm not going to go into that. No, I mean, just a few interesting quick thoughts for this one anyway, just for the end, is like, well, what if like a psychopath, for example, was put into this position? Like, if they had themselves as a child, like, what do you reckon they would do? Because, I don't know, I think it's just a bit of an interesting thought. Um, Another thought as well was like, well, if you couldn't have any other option other than you can only have yourself as your child, but you had like say genetic diseases or like some severe mental health issues or whatever, then would you? Now, I'd say that as a question isn't too far off of like real life, because like say you're a carrier of some disease and you choose to have children, there's a good risk that that child might then get that disease. Still, so I'd say that's not too far off of real life, but it's still a bit of an interesting thought. And then alongside that, like, what if instead of it like being your only option, what if you could still have a normal child as well, but also, if you so chose, be able to have yourself as your own child, if that makes sense. I keep saying that because I don't know if it like makes as much sense as I think it is, but regardless, you're 10 minutes into the video if you're hearing that by now. I'd hope you'd know what I mean. But yeah, I'll repeat that again anyway. Oh yeah, so like if basically instead of it being your only option, you could have a normal child and yourself. Like I think it's just another interesting question. But yeah, no, I'll stop the video here anyway because it's like 11 minutes long. So yeah, no, wiggle.